should you get the iPad mini 2 here in 2024? So my answer for a lot of you would be yes, but it all depends on what you want to use it for. So first off, I'm going to cover the specs and the design of the iPad mini 2. So first off, starting off with the design, the only unique features here is that despite its age, it does still have a lightning connector, and it also has the iPad ringer, which isn't included on newer iPads, and we also don't have a flashlight. You only have the camera on the back. Now that's all there is for the design. Let's talk about the performance of the iPad mini 2. The iPad mini 2 has just 1GB of RAM, and it also has the Apple A7 chip, so it has about the same specs as the one on the iPhone 5S, and so it doesn't really perform well here in 2024. And as for the storage, here's the storage models here. There's 16, 32, 64, and 128GB models, but as you go up the storage, the price can go more than double. So that's all there is for the performance of the iPad mini 2. Let's move on to the battery. So the iPad mini 2 has about 6,500 mAh of battery, and this means that it'll last you more than the whole day. It could even last you several days without charging it. So the battery on here is really good, and if we compare it to the iPhone 15 Pro, the latest iPhone 15 Pro has about 3,800 mAh of battery, so this is definitely not going to be an issue at all on the iPad mini. Now moving on to the camera of this device, so the iPad mini 2 can capture up to 5 megapixel photos with the rear camera and 1.2 megapixel photos with a front camera. And as for the video specs, it can record videos of up to 1080p at 30 frames per second. Now let's start with a photo test on the iPad mini 2, and then we'll move to a video test. So here's what the rear camera looks like on the iPad mini 2. Pause the video if you need to. And now here's what the front camera selfie looks like on the iPad mini 2. And let's now move on to the video. So here's what rear camera video looks like on the iPad mini 2. And let's try focusing on this other device so that you can see the details. And the lighting on here is pretty awful, and it's going to be hard to get good footage on the iPad mini 2. So here's what the front camera looks like on the iPad mini 2. And the camera quality on here is pretty grainy, and it is good enough for FaceTime, but it's nothing that you'd want to use for social media. Now the last thing we need to cover for the specs of the iPad mini 2 is the display. So the display on the iPad mini 2 is really good. It's small, so it's really portable, and the screen resolution is 2048 by 1536, and it's at 326 pixels per inch. And the screen resolution in itself is already really good, but because the iPad mini 2 has such a small display compared to the other iPads, the pixels are much smaller and it's much more detailed. Also, just for your information, the display is 7.9 inches diagonally, and compared to the other iPads are usually about 11 or 12 inches. So that's really all there is to cover for the display of the iPad mini 2. So let's now talk about whether or not it's still worth buying here in 2024. So the iPad mini 2 is a decent device for reading documents or writing documents, or if you want to watch certain films, it's able to play videos alright. Now for streaming services like Netflix, YouTube, and Apple TV, the iPad mini 2 is going to be really slow. So if you want to play videos on here, you should download the video offline on your device. So overall, it's just note-taking and offline video playback that works on the iPad mini 2. And as for online gaming is really bad on here, but offline gaming is alright. Now as for social media, and especially online gaming, it's going to be really hard to run those on the iPad mini 2 because it is a really old device. The hardware on here is about as good as the one on the iPhone 5S, so you can't really load those well at all. And when you browse the web, it is going to be hard to load websites, so if you want to read documents on here, just make sure they're offline. So even though this device is not able to support much more than just note-taking and reading documents and just watching videos, I could still recommend getting this device here in 2024, and I still use it on a daily basis for reading documents and watching the videos that I have saved on here. And overall, those don't really have much lag on the iPad mini 2. And if you want to know how much the iPad mini 2 costs here in 2024, it only cost me about $50, and you could get it on places like eBay. That's the one that I would recommend because it does have some of the best deals. And that's basically it for this video. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like, subscribe, and check out my channel to see more videos like this in the future. Also, I do have my other iPad reviews in the description, so if you're interested, make sure to check them out.